So what we're doing this morning is we're talking about the process of putting top material on 1939 Ford Woody station wagons. And in 1939, Ford built two types of station wagons, a standard and a deluxe. And obviously, from the words, that standard was more of a poor man's car that was used by hardware stores, and hotels to haul people and luggage around. And the deluxe was a little fancier, had more chrome, had a redesigned front end, had a fancy steering wheel, had a clock in the glove box. Now the deluxe had a little bit fancier roof material. This is called long grain black, as opposed to the standard, which is here, which has just a plain brown vinyl top to it. So the two compared to one another is like so, kind of. Both of these materials are covered in white underneath. And I'm not sure why that is, but if you can imagine this being overhead of you, when you're in the car and you look up, you see this white material because there are wood slats that run from front to back on the car, and there's a space between these slats where you can see this roof material. So that's part one. I want to briefly talk about a mistake I made in working on the 39 Deluxe. And I'm going to describe that right here because this is an original rear header. So it's the piece at the back of the car that goes across from driver to passenger side. And when I rebuilt the body on the Deluxe, which we'll show you, I left too much of a crown on this beam. And when we went to fix and put the material on, it left too much material and we couldn't fit the corners, so I had to shape this beam on the car back down to the way this original is. And I'll discuss that in a minute. In order to correct this crowning problem, I had to make templates off of this original and transfer them to the Deluxe, which has too much wood material. And so to find out exactly where I was supposed to be, I made these individual templates, which I figured out I put 9 inches apart. And the reason for that is I was going to cut a slot at each 9 inches to the exact contour, and then when I went to shave the wood, I shaved it down to those slots, which would then give me a consistent cut across the entire beam, and we're going to incorporate some photos into that. So here, for example, is the driver's side number 2, and that shows you the contour that I'm looking for here, which is what I had to trim the wood on the new Deluxe. So can you imagine these things going? And then because this is also crowned from left to right, I then incorporated identical templates: center, drivers 1, drivers 2, drivers 3, passenger 1, passenger 2, passenger 3, so that I could be sure when I was finished. I can't get the template down all the way because of the table here, but you get the concept that when we were finished, we had the wood beam now reconfigured to the point that we wanted to have it. So that took a lot of time. I cut it mostly with a power planer, a little hand power planer. And when you take that planer, instead of trying to cut this whole thing at once, which is impossible, and getting it correct, this way I just had to go from template, the slots for each template, and it's much easier than to get the whole piece in. In the photographs you can see how it came out. So This is a contour tool, and I have a long version and a short version. And this tool has literally hundreds of individual sliding tiny little things that are put together. And when you want to make a profile like here, and you put this tool and you just start pushing out, you should do it backwards actually, you start pushing out these different pieces here, you can match a profile very, very closely, like this. See how that goes? And you eventually run out of how far this can expand, but nonetheless you get the idea. Then I transferred that, and that's how we made the contour for these templates, which we then incorporate into the slots and cutting the header back to where it had to be. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce my grandson Noah, who is going to assist us in this presentation this morning. So the complexities of putting on these roofs is trying to get three-dimensional installation of the top material. And Noah, if you can hold both sides here, I'll explain where the problem comes in. On these back sides, when you bring material in like this on both sides to make it tight, you end up with this big flap. What do you do about the flap? So the solution to this is you want to try and work the material back towards the center on the rear beam and back towards the center on the side beam until you actually, in effect, make that disappear by stretching this material out like this and out the other way until it looks like it's supposed to, like that. And we'll show you on the car actually. Now the problem we discussed a minute ago about having too much wood material here, because of that profile, it caused this flap on the back to be too big to be able to stretch it down on the back side and up the other side. It's impossible. So now that we've trimmed this back header, now we can do it correctly, and we'll show you that on the car in just a minute. So here we are now with the 39 Deluxe, the rear corner, and we have solved the flap problem by stretching this material that way and this way, and until we get a correct corner, which is going to end up being just like this. And you can still see we've got some wrinkles in here, but the major part of it has been spread out down here about 1.5 feet, and down here about 1.5 feet. Also, we take a hairdryer and put some heat on this material, which makes it a little bit more flexible, and that makes it easier to pull it together. Now, the purpose for all of these tacks is we are consolidating so much material as we go here that we have to have a tack just about every 1/8 of an inch or every quarter. Now here you can see still, for example, this little bitty thing here. When we go to final on the tacks, we will be able to pull that flat like that, and I'll put a tack in here, and that will hold it, and then the metal trim piece, which I'll show you in a minute, is going to cover this whole thing as we put in the drip rail or for water that comes down here and runs off. I'll show you that piece in a minute. So we're going to work our way slow but sure down each edge like that, and it's going to turn out to be exactly the way it's supposed to. Now this issue does not only exist here at the rear, as I'll show you in a second. It exists on other parts of the car as well as we work our way forward. Okay, so here we are now over the driver's door. And as you can see, because the roof is tapering this way, the same concept exists here. It's crunching the material towards the center. So we have the same problem as we had back there, most severe at the rear, but nonetheless, you can see this excess material is revealing itself in these flaps. And so we have to, again, squeeze it together. Now you can see right here, once I put tacks between these tacks, so we're going to have a almost continuous line of tacks, we will have a nice smooth roof line as we work our way along. As we work our way along, one tack at a time kind of, and you can see how that works itself out. Now as we get here at the front header, we're going to have the same problem, because although not as severe as the back, you can see where the roof beam comes here and it curves in and it then joins up to the cowl. There's a hole, if you can see this hole here. Those holes are through that cowl all the way down, and the tacks that are here go through those holes in the cowl and into the front wood header beam, which is another kind of tricky thing. So we got the same problem here, which is we have more material. Here again you got the same issue. You got the flap. Now this is looking pretty good, but what do you do with the material? So once again we're going to bring it down and we're going to spread it out to the left over the top and to the right back down the road, and we'll have a nice corner like we're supposed to, and we will have moved this material back for about a foot and we'll be good to go. Under normal circumstances, the way these roofs are put together is you get a bunch of your friends and they come over and we stand opposites, front and back, and passenger and driver side, and as we work our way along we stretch this tight, providing tension by the opposing people on the other side. So we would pull here and put some tacks, and then the other side would pull and put some tacks, and that's how this goes. But the problem I had, and with COVID and everything, after we had our initial difficulty on the back, I decided to go slower with this, and so I devised a system to put tension on this as I worked on it by myself. So here you can see I've got a clamp that's holding a piece of the roof here, and this ratchet strap goes down, and I've attached it to the wheel so that I can tighten it up and put tension on that roof, thereby stretching it from the back, which is already tacked, stretching it to the front so we can get nice tension up here like we're supposed to have. The other thing that I did was I took a clamp like this and I would put it on the inside, a piece of wood here to protect the material, clamp it tight, put 2 or 3 of these clamps to cover about a foot, and then I could go to the other side with the clamps holding it here. I could stretch it that way from the other side, put a few tacks in, like 2 or 3 inches at a time, and then I could come back over here, take the clamps off and stretch it back and put the tacks on this side, and that seemed to work pretty well in combination with the ratchet straps that were putting tension on it from the rear to the front. So that's where we are. The one final thing is, you would probably think that it's going to be pretty ugly with all of these tack heads hanging out when it's finished. And in a second I will show you a piece of metal that will cover all of these, and it will turn out to be nice and clean. This here is one of the pieces of metal that will cover the tacks along the side beams of the car. And as you can see, I have 5/8 of an inch between my fingers here, which is enough to cover those tack strips. So the tacks, of course, will be coming up like this, and this will cover them. So if you can imagine this now attached to the car, if you can see this profile, Isaac, now there is a little curved part here, and that's actually a rain gutter, or a drip rail, I think is probably the technical term, along the side of the car, which helps drain rainwater away from the doors in a rainstorm. So that's the metal that will cover both sides, and there's a metal piece that also covers the front header And then the rear of the car, if you can just step over this way a little bit, Isaac. This is called whelping. It covers the rear header, but only around the corner this far. And as you can see on the standard here, here's the drip rail. It covers the tacks. Then there's screws that go in it. And then there's a little piece of rubber. If you can step around here, Isaac, too. You can see the screw here. Can you see that screw? And then this little piece of rubber gets in here, folded in like this, and it covers the screw heads. So underneath all of this are the tacks, and this is what cleans it up. Now the whelping is a piece of leather. If you open it up, you pull it apart, and you can see little nail heads like this, where it's nailed to the wood beam, and the whelping covers the tacks that hold the roof material. And so you got roof material, the tacks, then the whelping with these little nails, and when the whelping closes, it's all dressed up and clean as a whistle. And so that's where we are, putting the roof material on the 39 Deluxe, and we'll provide further updates as we make progress. Thank you very much.